Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Brought to the Table, a podcast where we have a guest come onto the show and bring their unique perspectives and ideas to the table. I am your host, Luke Jones, and I'm very excited with our guest today because this topic has been something we've been brewing for basically 2 months at this point. But the guest herself is absolutely a wonderful human being. I would like to introduce Sarah Shah from Board Games in a Minute onto my show. Hello, Sarah. How are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
I'm very excited because I remember when you posted this idea that we talked about, I've been ever intrigued. And ever since then, you and I have been able to play some games together and kind of chit chat and stuff. And it's been really nice to get to know you. So I'm really excited to have you on.
Likewise. Yeah. I posted a poll. It was actually a poll.
Yeah, was that what it was?
It was a poll asking people if they would date someone who's not a board gamer. Yeah.
Is that what it was? Yeah, I remember because I think that's what got my attention in the first place. Because I was like, that's a really interesting topic to talk about.
Yeah.
But without spoiling too much.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. No, it's fine. We aren't serious on this show at all. Although we like to talk about serious things. So Sarah essentially is bringing the topic of conversation of basically dating in the tabletop gaming space is what I'm going to generically call this. And to start this off, I guess, Sarah, I know you posted the poll, but I guess what made you kind of think about this idea in the first place?
Oh, just personal experience, right? Because I'm single, so I'm on dating apps and I occasionally go out with guys and, it's really hard to find a board gamer. It's, not something that's very common that's going to be easy to find. So, after going on a couple of first dates with non-board gamers, I was just curious to see whether people in the board gaming community would date non-board gamers, whether, they've had like long successful relationships with non-board gamers. For me, board gaming is such a huge part of my life, so that's why I was curious to see what other people have thought about that.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pose the question on to you. So I'm gonna make you start us off. What are your feelings about it? How do you feel about dating someone who's not a board gamer, or do you think it's an incredibly important part of the relationship with someone who's into the tabletop community?
So for me, I think it's evolved. So before I became a content creator, I think I would have been fine dating someone who is not like an avid board gamer as long as they have their own hobbies and they're, willing to let me go to game nights, a couple of nights a week and have friends over, once in a while to play games. Then I think that would be fine. But since I've become a content creator, board games have become a much bigger part of my life, and they really do take up, a huge portion of my life. So I really do think at this point, there's no way I can be in a relationship with someone who doesn't, want to play board games as much as I do, because it has become kind of a second job for me. So I have my daytime job, which is a full-time job, and now my evening job playing board games and making videos about them. And it's a job I enjoy. Like, so calling it a job sounds kind of, bad, but it's something I really enjoy. So because it is such a huge part of my life now, I just cannot imagine being with someone who doesn't play board games. I just don't think it'll be feasible.
So yeah, I thought about this for a long time in my life because recently I broke up with someone earlier this year, and I introduced said person to the wonderful world of tabletop gaming. And
Mhm.
what I realized through that relationship was that tabletop gaming is incredibly important. And one of the things that actually kind of severed it a little bit, and I won't go too much into detail, was that for at the very beginning of the relationship, with definitely having tons of fun playing all sorts of games, but personality stuff started clashing when playing games, and it was kind of this constant thing of having to win and impress me, and
Mm.
it kind of severed the desire to even want to play games, where I got to the point where I couldn't even play games with my significant other, and that sucked. I will tell you.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, and one of the things I kind of always thought about even before going into that relationship though was the fact that, like, as long as someone supported kind of what you've already said of like, oh, you support the interest, you will at least be like understand the passion, especially for someone like you, obviously, who essentially this is like your second job, and you basically have to play games as part of your job. Um, and I that's kind of evolved into, I think, more of the interesting part of this conversation that I would like to get into is the psychology of
Mhm.
the someone who plays board games and actually enjoys them and actually wants other play people to enjoy them as well, essentially like what you do, essentially try to get people interested in playing games. I think there's a lot of different psychology that goes into like finding a partner that
Right.
wants to actually share that, and I think that's probably the more interesting part of this conversation.
Well, yeah, I won't profess to be an expert on,
None of us are
on
experts here on the
psychology
show.
behind board games or dating board gamers, but, I can give my 2 cents for sure.
I would love to hear your 2 cents. I like pennies.
Yeah?
I
Okay.
I'd like to give you 2 pennies. So here's my 2 pennies, and now I would love to hear the information that you're giving to me. That was the
Okay.
worst segue possible. I apologize to anyone listening to this right now. But please,
Yeah.
so like I guess my question I'll pose to you to kind of get this kicked off is, what types of personality traits do you think like us board gamers have? Like, let's not even talk about the dating aspect of it. What do you think
Oh
makes
god.
us like tabletop gamers to begin with?
Well, people who enjoy solving puzzles or strategizing about things, right? So, hmm, people who maybe like to think abstractly, I don't know. People who enjoy interaction. I mean, I guess that, won't apply to all board gamers. There are solo board gamers, and not
Right.
all board games, have a lot of interaction, player interaction, especially if you're like looking at a really like, you know, a Euro that maybe
Yeah, I was gonna
doesn't.
say, you like your Euro games, you don't really interact
Yeah.
with people that much.
Yeah, but for me, personally, I enjoy, trying to kind of solve something and trying to win at something. I'm not a sore loser or sore winner by any means, though. But yeah, just, sitting around a table, joking with people, having fun with them while doing something, something that you enjoy. I don't know how you would describe that in terms of personality.
Yeah, I guess so. Like with me, I guess, like, for those, I mean, people know I'm a teacher. So, like, I always kind of say, like, part of, when you compare like a video game to like a board game, kind of the thing with the video game is the fact that all you got to do is turn your console on, pick up the controller, turn the game on, and go. The game does all the teaching for you.
Mhm.
And the tabletop games don't do that. They
Right.
now granted, obviously there's people like yourself and other content creators that actually walk through a little bit on how to play a game and kind of the guts of it. But really it's on the player to actually go do their homework to go figure that out.
Mhm.
And I do think usually like I when I've and I've interacted with folks, especially when you're teaching a game for the first time, that the folks that really enjoy learning are the ones that kind of pick up on all like what makes tabletop gaming so interesting to begin with.
Mhm.
Because you talk about like strategy and things like that. And what I found is that to my friends that I've introduced the hobby to, they like learning new things. Now, they don't necessarily, I'm not talking about people who like to sit in a classroom and do homework all day, but
Right.
they enjoy sitting down and trying to, like you said, figure out that puzzle and learn those new tricks and then use those tricks to try to see if they can succeed.
Yeah, I think
Eh,
that's a good way to describe it. I definitely love learning new things, and, every time you get a new board game, the mechanics might be similar, but you still need to learn exactly how those mechanics work in that game to, get you to win. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I know, I've talked about this on plethora of streams and podcasts. But my dad is usually the person I grew up playing tabletop games with all the time. And, as he's gotten older, he definitely is not in the learning spirit as much as he used to back in the younger days. And I remember I recently tried to introduce to him Wingspan. And let me tell you, he was not a fan of Wingspan. He was just not on that
Oh,
learning train with that game. But he does like enjoy learning other lighter games. And I do
Mhm.
think there is a little bit of it that I guess the complexity too in those games, I think also kind of forms some personality traits, whatever you will. Because like for me personally, I really like games that give you lots of decisions. I like
Mhm.
that giant decision tree. And I don't think that's for everybody, but I think there is something to do with that level of strategy that you have to learn and pick up. And if someone's not really into that learning aspect, I definitely don't know how well I can get along playing different games. Um, for sure. I think that's definitely one of the biggest uh-oh, I kind of have to figure this out type of moments with finding somebody, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
But as far as I going with this, I lost my train of thought. But so I guess with you, so obviously I don't need you to spill all your personal details, so do not feel like you need to do this on the show. Um, but like obviously you've probably dated some people who've played tabletop games before in some shape
Yeah,
or
in some
introduced
shape or
them.
form I have,
Yeah,
yes.
some shape or form and introduce. Like
Yeah.
what is that process like? Because I can definitely give my 2 cents, but I'd rather hear it from you because I would like to hear someone
Yeah,
else's perspective
it's
on it.
been interesting, like, I remember God, I guess it was, like, maybe back in, like, March or something, and I had this was a little bit before lockdown began, and I went on a first date with this guy, and he had mentioned that he used to play board games, but then he stopped, and then I immediately went to a Facebook group, and I was like, "Guys, what should we play on our second date?" Like and, lots of people were, like, suggesting games and stuff, and then when we met up for a second date, I brought a board game so we could play. It wasn't a surprise, he knew I was going to bring a board game. But he was like, not many women would do that, and he thought it was kind of strange that I that I was so
Really?
eager to play a board game with him, even though he used to play them when he was younger. And not just like, traditional like, old school board games. He played like hobby board games like years back, but then stopped for whatever reason. But yeah, like so he thought it was a bit strange that I was so eager to play a board game on a date. But I was like, for me, it's important because it's a big part of it's something that they enjoy. But at the same time, I feel like everyone puts their best foot forward, right, when they're dating. And so, like, what if someone's pretending to enjoy board games and then all of a sudden they feel like they have you like months down the line and then stop playing? So that's like one of my
I know
fears.
that fear.
Maybe
I've
it's an
personally
irrational
experienced
fear. I
it,
don't
so I
know.
get it.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe it's an irrational fear. I don't know, but you've experienced it. But like, I don't want to. So that's one of the reasons I've like kind of decided no, I have to be with someone who already is a hobby board gamer, like not someone that I need to convert into a hobby board gamer because I don't want to run the risk of, being like, if we end up in a relationship like a year down the line, they're like, okay, yeah, I don't really enjoy this. I'm done. Like, what am I going to do then?
yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
it's gotta be tough. Yeah, I don't wish that upon anybody because it is not fun. Um, but
That's not to say that, all I do is play board games. I have a
right.
wide variety of hobbies that I enjoy, but board games are a huge part of my life, like really big part of my life. So,
Yeah, and I think when it comes to the hobby, I think when like, obviously probably a lot of folks listening to this right now, maybe single, super into the hobby themselves, and they definitely want to introduce it. But I definitely have learned that like in your life, you have these big pillars that I would say like make up like some of your favorite things
mhm,
and like things that you're super passionate about. So like for me, it goes like education, going out and traveling, tabletop gaming, and then Crash Bandicoot because you can't
right.
not like the orange marsupial. But the thing is like you want like you have the person that you want to be with has to they don't have to be into that the same way that you are. Like I would never expect my significant other to be on the same page as what I am with Crash Bandicoot because that's just an absurd level of nonsense.
Right,
But
right.
you at least have to care. And I think
Yeah,
that's like talking about like that fear of like, oh, you want to introduce this thing that you're super passionate about. They're buying into it, and then like a year, like you said, a year down the road, they lose interest or they no longer care, and then that starts to bleed into part of the relationship dynamic. And I don't. It's just so tough because how do you introduce someone to that hobby that's you're super passionate about, and you don't necessarily need them to buy in, but you also want them to care because
Right.
you
So
can be
caring
super
is
into the weeds in
important.
these games.
Yeah,
Sure.
so I was in a relationship once that was not going very well, and I did so much reading into like how relationships fail or why they fail. And one of the books I read was, I don't remember the name of it, but it was this guy who studied relationships, a psychologist, and he came up with the four horsemen or something, or the four, yeah, I can't remember what it's called, the four horsemen of like a, a relationship that if these things like appear in your relationship, they're not going to work. And one of them was like, I believe if I remember correctly, like people just not caring or not, I don't remember the technical terms he used, but even if you're not into something, you just have to kind of actively listen and show the person that you care, that they care about that thing. So even if it's not something that you're into, just to show that, oh, like I care that you care about it, and that's why I want to hear you talk about it, even if it's just you know
Yeah, because like I would say because like I know you and I enjoy very different games. So like even from a friendship perspective, it's just like like we definitely have games that we both enjoy, but
yeah.
like when you're trying to talk with your significant other, it's like everyone knows I'm into villainous. So like if my next partner comes up to me and and like I'm talking about let's say the next villainous expansion and it's got all these crazy characters, you know I would prefer if they were instead of being like, "Oh, that's cool," to be like, "Oh, like who's in it? Like, what movies are they from? Did they do anything
Right.
cool?" And like, I don't expect them to hear me gush about it, but like, it's the weird teaching side of me is just like, just ask questions and show interest, and don't. And it's like, I don't know how to say it. It's like, don't make it feel like it's forced. More, it's like you are actually generally interested in your significant other's passions, if
Yeah,
that makes
so
sense.
that's an important part of a relationship. If someone isn't genuinely interested in what you're interested in, then is it really a healthy relationship? I don't know. I would say probably not.
I mean, I can agree the same thing. But I mean, granted, is like this whole podcast might end up turning into dating advice 101, which I am not the person to
Yeah,
say.
we're experts, right?
Yeah,
So
we're
we're like
super
giving
experts
everyone
right
dating
now.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I know because I especially for me, I do think that tabletop gaming is like a huge part of my life at this point now. Like I mean, obviously same thing with you, like becoming a content creator and creating this stuff and having an internet presence. This just made me show how important this is. And especially with board games being such a social interaction.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I played video games before with like significant others and stuff, and like the actual social aspect of playing a video game compared to a tabletop game is completely different. And I feel like you learn so much more about someone while playing a tabletop game
Oh,
from, you know,
definitely.
like from an emotional standpoint to like maybe some things that they'll point out and like they'll even talk about. Cause like in a video game, you're just interacting and you're trying to actually like get from point A to point B in maybe a set amount of time. While a tabletop game, there is really, for most games, no timer. So
Yeah,
like
I
you
think
can
there's
actually
so
just like
much.
stop the game, have a conversation, and then go.
Oh yeah, there's so much more to see about a person when you're playing a board game. You'll see like if they're polite, like if your turn comes up, are they just going to be like, it's your turn? Are they going to be rude about it? Like, if they have to hand you things, will they hand it to you gently or just throw it at you? You
Just
know, so,
yeah,
so,
it's
so
funny.
there's a lot of little things you could pick up on about a person while playing a board game, I feel like.
I'm just picturing right now one of the villainous movers just being chucked at me. It's like, oh,
Oh.
here you go, whack.
Yeah.
So here's a giant spear that's coming towards your
Just
chest.
whack someone with
Um,
the dice. Yeah.
that's funny. Yeah, no, I think and I think what makes this more difficult is because we are in the year of 2020,
Oh yeah.
and I especially with tabletop gaming being such an in-person thing.
Hmm.
Obviously there's been lots of new iterations of playing tabletop games online, and it's definitely not the same,
Oh no.
for sure. And I remember actually earlier in the pandemic, there was someone interested in me, and we were playing some games through Tabletop Simulator. And let me tell you, that is not the same experience as if it were in person.
Oh god, no,
And
it's definitely not the same experience.
it's just like it's difficult, and you want to be able to share those experiences with people, but I don't necessarily know the best way to do it right now in 2020. And obviously there's 100 different reasons why that's not safe to do right now. But at the same time, it's just like, how do you really share that with someone? Be like, hey, I'm really into tabletop games, and they can't
Mhm.
even come over to your apartment or your house or whatnot to even play it. I don't know.
Well, you know, I have since things eased up a little bit. I did this was like, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago I did go out on a date with someone. Maybe it was 2 months ago. Time is just so weird now. I can't even remember when
Time's a flat
something
circle.
was. Yeah, but I did go out on a date with someone and made sure that they were, wearing their masks and everything so we felt comfortable going on a date. And then on the third date, I think we played a board game. Because I introduced him to a board game. But yeah, it is definitely harder now. Like it's way harder to meet people and play board games with people. I just don't get to play board games as often as I would like. Um,
It's difficult.
yeah, but
Um,
for dating, it's especially difficult because you don't know if someone is actually being careful when they're out and about, if they're wearing a mask and,
yeah,
you
especially when
know.
they're touching all the pieces.
Oh god, yeah. I remember just right before lockdown began, we had our last meetup. I would run a weekly meetup in the city I live in, and this is just when all the talk about pandemic was getting really big and people were getting ready to shut down restaurants and everything. And my weekly meetup was held in an ice cream shop every Wednesday night. And so this guy who came to the meetup for the first time was like sitting across from me and just coughing into his hands and then touching all the pieces. And I was like,
Uh,
yeah, I was having an internal meltdown. Just
oh
like,
God.
yeah, just it was awful.
Like one of my biggest pet peeves is when people like, and granted, my friends don't know that I'm like this, but like when people are just sitting there coughing and hacking and like just not even covering their mouth, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, this game that we have to interact with each other's cards. I'm just gonna cough and just
Oh,
interact and give you this card." I'm like,
no.
"No, why?"
Gosh, no, ever since I was little, I don't know what it is. I've been always very like I've been super vigilant about hygiene and, germs and things like that. So from a very young age, I've been doing the Dracula cough, like not just since this pandemic started, but from way long ago, where I always cough into like my elbow and my sleeve rather than into my hands, which are then going to touch other things. And even before the pandemic started, I never touched public doorknobs. I would always like use a scarf or something to open public doors. And so to see a person like coughing into their hands and then touching the pieces, and yeah, I was just, oh no.
I don't talk about this very often, but when I'm actually out and I have to go use the restroom, I am the guy that like carries like an extra like glove or something
Oh,
that
for
I use to
sure.
close the doors. And if for some reason I don't have it, I am the guy that's instantly running to the paper towel thing, and I'm just ripping
Yeah.
off a bunch. So that way when I have to, do things in the bathroom and like interact with doors and knobs on the sink, I'm like, all right, I don't want to touch it because that's
Yeah.
nasty. And
I know that this is veering away from the conversation, but this led to a family argument one time where
this
we
tangents are what we do on the show.
we were
Please.
sitting at a yeah, we were sitting at a restaurant and I went to go use the restroom and my family knows that I don't touch public doorknobs and I always use a paper towel to open the door after I've used the restroom or, a scarf or something like that. So then my mom and sister used the bathroom and then they came back and, we had a basket of bread and I wanted to be the one to touch it, to cut it up into pieces because I know how careful I am about that stuff. But then my sister touched all of the bread and I was like, well, great. Now I can't eat that bread.
Oh,
And so and it led into a huge family argument because they're like, Sarah, you have got to stop being like this. And I was like, what? I was like, I've seen you guys use the restroom in public restrooms and you guys touch the doorknobs. And then it turned into this whole big thing about how I, am just too neurotic and just need to, ease up a bit.
oh. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, in 2020, I know we're still on a tangent, but it's this is what we do on any podcast. Like in 2020, I'm at the point now that like once even the pandemic's over, I think I'm still just gonna go wear my mask because what's been
Really?
interesting is that because I mean, for teaching, like you interact with so many people. So like when there's a
Yeah.
sickness going on, if you're not careful, you're gonna catch it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I take a walk every single day. So, and there's still people that walk around because I just want to get my exercise. and I always wear my mask. And for some reason, the entire year, knock on wood, I have never been sick. This is the first year in my
Wow.
entire life I've never had anything from like a cold, a
What?
flu, anything.
Oh my
And
god.
I'm like, and granted, I don't get sick very often, but it like when I get sick, I get sick. So
Wow.
I'm like, I'm just gonna wear my mask. So I mean,
Yeah.
like, I don't blame you with that stuff because like at this point in 2020, I'm just like this stuff is stuff I'm gonna probably do after the pandemic's gone and
Yeah, I
everything's
mean, I
done.
probably should as well. I remember this is before the pandemic. I was in court with a client because I'm an attorney, in case people don't know. And I had a client literally cough right into my face.
Oh,
Like, didn't even cover her, mouth, anything, just like coughed right in my face. And I'm like, are you serious? Like,
on
oh,
people.
I know.
But anyway, back to the topic at hand,
Right.
tangent 101. That's what we do. I need to honestly make a tangent counter on the show and for how many tangents we go on because they're inherent. I do this all the time when I teach, so it's okay. But yeah, going back, I guess one thing I would ask you because I've been horrible about introducing games to significant others. I'll tell you that much.
Mhm.
The way I've introduced it, I remember for context, there was so 2 years ago when I was introducing my ex to tabletop games, so the Transformers trading card game was coming out. Also, if you haven't
Mhm.
played that game, the game is fantastic.
I
And
have not.
because it's incredibly simple. It's very simple concept and
Yeah.
everything. And I literally told her because she was getting into it and starting to liking games, and I was like, "You would really like this game because it's simple to understand." Don't ever say that because it's a dumb thing to say. Um,
Oh.
but that's me admitting that I'm stupid. But even then, it's like the thing I remember was when you're trying to get someone into the hobby or introduce them to the stuff that you
Mhm.
like, you don't go hard on them. You know, like you don't like. I always make the joke about how Twilight Imperium is like one of the most complex games out there. So it's like,
Mhm.
hey, significant other, Twilight Imperium, let's play this game. I would
Yeah,
never
bad
do that.
idea.
So
No.
like, so as the female on the podcast, like, how would you like to be addressed? How would you like introduce a game to somebody, and like, what games would you
Well, I can just tell you
what
what
games would you want to introduce?
well, I can't speak as a female who doesn't play board games, who would what board games I would want a guy to introduce me to because I do play board games. So,
Yeah, you're an experience. You're a veteran.
yeah, I'm a veteran, but I can tell you what board games I introduce to guys when I go on dates.
Please.
So the two main games I will play on dates are Cartographers or Five Tribes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I feel like those are two good ones. Five Tribes, if if we're gonna have a date where there's a big table and I know we have space for it, but Cartographers is something that is very portable and I can take on a date easily, and it's still fun. Like there's still a bit more to it than just filling in boxes on a map. Like you still have to strategically place the terrain that comes up and try to avoid those goblins and everything. So it's fun, and it's something that you can usually get in a couple of games of when you play it. So, and then Five Tribes, people really like Five Tribes when I introduce that to them on a date. Because a lot of people have heard of Mancala, which is funny because I was only introduced to Mancala after I got into hobby board gaming. I had no idea what Mancala was before that. But a lot of people seem to know what Mancala is. So then I just tell them Five Tribes is Mancala on steroids. And then, it's really easy for them to understand. And they tend to like it a lot. Five Tribes, I feel like, is a really great game to play on a date.
So I got two things. Number one, I know of Five Tribes. I've never played it though. I know what it
What?
is.
Oh no.
I've never played it. So don't judge me for those of you tabletop listeners because I know people really like Five Tribes. Um, but number two, and I guess this is the one I struggle with personally, so you can help me have a better understanding. Is and I know you and I have had these conversations, off the podcast, when we've done Zoom calls and stuff. Is I'm a very the way I get into my games is it has to be something that I'm passionate about, whether it's the
Mhm.
game mechanics, the IP associated with the game mechanics,
Right.
stuff like that. So, people know me as the Disney villainous guy. I talk a lot about how I love fighting games. So a lot of the fighting game board games like Exceed, Yomi. I'm huge into Star Wars Destiny. And Disney Villainous might be the only one of those games in particular that like is approachable. Especially if
Mhm.
you're trying to introduce someone into the hobby.
Would you say it's very approachable? Because with the different characters having different objectives that they need to meet, you don't think that might be difficult for someone who's never.
So I can say from talking with one of the designers, especially for the most recent expansion, that Disney Villainous' whole appeal is the fact it's like it's like quote unquote my first asymmetric game, if that makes sense. But
Mm,
it's also a game designed to help get people into the hobby.
okay.
That's why it's 8 and plus on the age for at least Disney. Marvel is different.
Oh.
Marvel, I definitely would not say is a gateway game. Disney specifically definitely is probably more complex, but
Mhm.
it's the way it's designed is like, all right, your space is all you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about anyone
Okay.
else's. You look at someone else's and then try to stop them. But that's the thing is like those types of concepts are really easy to like explain and understand like to somebody. Me trying to explain Star Wars Destiny of like, oh, so you got to build a deck, you got to run these characters and activate them, roll dice, manipulate dice, and do stuff. And if whenever I introduce that game to someone who's typically not a tabletop gamer, they
Mhm.
look at me and they're like, huh? Um, so I and the thing is, like, those are games, and I'm passionate about these games. So, like,
Right.
how do you make sure that you're still passionate while still showing off the hobby? I guess because
Oh.
you and I definitely play two different types of games, and so there we go. I'm gonna leave it there. I'll let you address.
How do I make sure I'm still passionate while teaching someone the game or showing it to them?
Yeah,
Ah.
I mean, well, even just introducing the game, because like to me, like I would want to introduce games that I love. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that's what I do, so I love Five Tribes.
Well, there you go. I need to find
Yeah.
easier games to like.
So I love Five Tribes, and I think Five Tribes is a really great game to introduce to people who are not into hobby board gaming because not only, does it have all these amazing colored meeples in it, and one of the things I love most about board games is like the tactile nature of it, like picking up pieces that are really nice, like really nice wooden components and stuff like that. But Five Tribes is also really great because you're trying to meet different objectives. You're trying to get these gins that might give you special abilities. You're trying to collect the items from the market to maybe get some points in the end. So there's a few paths to victory. And once the other person learns about all the different things that they can do, I think they get really into it. And I think it's a really good introduction to hobby board gaming. It's a really good game to do that, I think. And my passion comes out for it because I love it. I love Five Tribes. So yeah.
You're making me have to start liking more simpler games.
Yeah, I like a wide variety of games. I like simple games. I like really complex games like Trickerion so I would not introduce, a date to Trickerion if they're not into hobby
Yeah.
board games, but
I get it's interesting too because I actually play like a majority of the games that I really, really like are best or only two player, which you
Mm,
think would be great for like a date environment. But like
yeah.
even if I were to introduce like starter decks for like Star Wars Destiny, that's still like a whole workaround progress. And
Mhm,
like me, one of my favorite like gateway games that you can go find at like a store like a Walmart or a Target is Ticket to Ride. I adore Ticket to
ah,
Ride. Um, but I don't play it very often
ooh, yeah.
anymore just because I've definitely grown in the hobby since I played Ticket to Ride. Like I played
Mhm.
Ticket to Ride first time back in like 20 or 2009, I
Oh,
think.
wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And granted, I played it a lot since then, and I've gotten one of the expansions and all that stuff. But like, I think, yeah, because like after Ticket to Ride, everything up from there was like, I don't want to say like a big complex step up,
Mhm.
but like trying to introduce someone in the hobby, I think the only other game I own that would be really good is like King of Tokyo. Because King of Tokyo is essentially Yahtzee, but more fun and interactive, and like you're doing fun things like damaging your friends. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that game is really great for dating because for a date because that one can make people upset.
You know
Um,
what would be a really fun game for a date? I think Quacks of Quedlinburg. Have you played Quacks?
I know of it, but I have not played it. No.
I think that would be a really fun game to play on a date, especially if you have like upgraded components for the chips because it's a push your luck game. So it's just a lot of fun. And I find that whenever I play Quacks with people, we're just having a really good time, like, pulling out the pieces and, we're on the verge of exploding, trying to decide whether or not we want to stop, whether or not we want to like take a gamble and just keep on pulling out pieces. It is super fun. It's super colorful. It's, got like a kind of a quirky kind of theme. Yeah, I think Quacks would be a really great game for a date.
I was gonna actually say this. Like, is there any cooperative games you would think to take?
Hmm. I'm not a huge fan of cooperative games. One that I played a couple of months ago I really liked is Endangered, but I'm not sure I'd want to play that on a date because, I'm really into animal rights and playing a game called Endangered where you're trying to save these endangered species. And if we fail, that
That's
just might put
stressful.
a damper on everything.
Yeah.
I'll just be thinking about animals in real life and how, polar bears are dying and elephants are
Sarah, why are you
dying.
crying right now? That's what
Yeah.
that's what they're gonna ask.
Right, yeah. So
Yeah.
no, cooperative games, I've been told by people that cooperative games would be a really good idea for a date to see if the other person, can work with you, if you can work as a team together, but, I enjoy competition, so
I mean, I think that's also something you gotta measure too, is like, because that was one of the things I learned from my past relationship was like competition was like not with me. Like to me, competition's like I want to play to win and like do all the cool combos, but if I
Mhm.
lose, I lose. Like all
Yeah.
that type of thing. It's also like you don't have to impress your significant other to win them over. You know what I mean?
I think it's more fun to play, a competitive game on a date because, then you'll have that, like, fun banter about, just, trash talking in a kind of fun way, not in a very mean way, obviously.
Obviously.
So, yeah, I like that. I'm not a sore loser, and then also if I do win, it's, a good opportunity for me to see what the other person is like if they lose or how they are if they win, like, will they gloat a lot? Like, it offers more opportunity to see the other person's personality, I think.
No, I definitely agree on that front. Do you think it's something that you can learn instantly? Like
Wha
after you play like a game, like maybe a
Oh.
game or two. You know
No,
what I
because
mean?
like I said, people are always going to put their best foot forward in the beginning, right? No one's going to come out on a first date and be like, "Yeah, I'm a sore loser, so if I lose this
Oh,
game, I'm gonna like flip the table." Like no one's going to do that, right?
I mean, so straightforward. Be like, yeah, if I lose this game, see this table? It's going on your face.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone's gonna be that straightforward. That'd be funny. I I guess because like in my without going too much detail, like in my experience, like that was one of the things that I had to learn over time.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing that I mean, it goes back to what you said about the fear factor. And I just don't know if they're like obviously you don't want to like force like brute force the process of learning that. But I mean, how do you know that like what are some ways you can think
Right.
of making sure like, a year down the road are you still enjoying playing games with your significant
Yeah.
other, especially
Well,
since it's a very big part.
yeah, I don't know what ways there are to do that, but this all goes back to why I want to date someone who's already a hobby board gamer because I don't have to worry about all these things then, right? So if
Yeah.
someone's a hobby board gamer and they, I know that they've been attending meetups, they have a gaming group, then I would have to assume that they're a reasonably well-liked person. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a regular gaming group, right? So I would assume that they're probably not a sore loser. They're probably not super arrogant or gloating when they win or whatever. Like, I would assume that they just really enjoy the hobby. So that's why I feel like I just need to be with a hobby board gamer and not have to worry about, trying to maintain someone's interests in a hobby of mine and worrying about whether, a couple of years down the road they'll be sick of it, just all of these things, or if they'll complain that I play board games too much. Like, I don't want to be with someone who complains that I play too many board
Oh
games.
God, no.
Yeah.
So I guess my question with that, and this is something I thought about before we did the show, is what makes it so difficult to find someone like this?
God,
Because
well, for me
yeah,
personally, it's the location. I feel like living in a college town, for people who don't know, I live in Ithaca, New York, which is an amazingly beautiful place to live. And we have a really decent sized board gaming community here, just not many prospects for dating. They're my friends. I wouldn't really, it's just so And people in Ithaca, it's a very transient place. I feel like people are just coming and going all the time. They're students, they're coming to study, complete their PhD, whatever, and then they're gone. And it's really hard to find someone who is permanent in Ithaca, who is a hobby board gamer, who would be a good prospect for me to date. So
I gotcha. Sorry if
yeah.
if it was a little personal.
No, it's not personal. It's just, it's just funny because I mean, there are guys in my age group, or not even in my age group. Like, I don't mind going a bit younger either. But like, there are guys who I could potentially date, but because we've been friends to start with, it's just probably not something I'd want to approach. So
You don't want to sever the ties.
yeah, I don't want to make my board gaming groups awkward.
Yeah, they're like the board game groups are now dating circles, is what they are.
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing that's always been interesting to me. So like, people know I'm from Indiana. I'm directly in Indianapolis, so I'm smack dab in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
And since Indianapolis is Gen Con Central, you would think we have more folks around here that are super into the tabletop gaming space. But something I kind of realized over the years of kind of growing up here and kind of, starting to experiment and going to different stores and stuff is that, there are meetups, but they're kind of outside my age range.
Mhm.
We're talking people in their 40s and 50s.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And then anyone who gets together at stores, they're getting together to do like, Friday night magic
Oh,
or
right.
something like that. And I'm not into Magic the Gathering. And I know specifically with Indiana, we're like all the different stores are very like competitive circuit driven. So like a lot of their money market is from people coming in to
Mhm.
play Friday Night Magic or whatever the game is. I know my local store down the street is essentially like that. And
Yeah.
it's harder to meet people without trying to not, I hate using the word brute force it, but like essentially just say, hey, do you want to play this game?
Yeah, and how do you like, my dream was always like to go to a con, a board gaming con, and like play a game with someone and hit it off and be like, yeah, let's exchange numbers and let's keep in touch and then, fall in love and get married. But how do you do that
That's the
even when you're at a
dream.
con? It's like, I end up spending most of my time with friends when I'm at a con, and the few times I do play with strangers, they're just very nice and you play a board game, but you can't ask someone, are you single? Like, or I
Yeah,
suppose you
exactly.
can, but I'm not, bold enough to do that. And it's, that's why I was saying that we need an app like for board gamers. We need a
Oh
dating
God.
app for board gamers.
So, for disclosure, so when Sarah and I were first talking about this over, I think, a Zoom call, I was explaining to Sarah that it's really not that hard to make Tinder. It really isn't. And I totally could do it in like a month if you gave me the time.
Yeah, we could
Um,
call it like two meeples or searching for player number two or something like that. I don't know.
yeah, that'd be interesting. I always thought of when I was thinking about this, I was like something about like rolling the dice. So because like on all
Hmm.
those dating apps, essentially like pressing your luck, essentially
Yeah.
about what's gonna happen.
I mean, I feel like
So
there's people who want this app. I even posted about this on Twitter like months and months ago. I was like, why is there not an app for board gamers, like a dating app for board gamers? That would make my life so much easier.
I I agree. That would be the one app I would get on. But I just but even then it's like even with an app like that, it's just like, you know, it goes back to what we said about like obviously there's more in the relationship just been playing board games. There's obviously
Oh,
a
of
lot more that
course. I
goes
mean,
into it.
obviously, yeah, you're not
Yeah,
just looking
obviously.
for just a board game, or you're
Yeah,
looking
no,
for someone
exactly.
who
I
you,
just need
yeah.
someone to play villainous with me every single day for the rest of my life. Um, yeah, no.
No.
I have other things I like to do.
No,
But
of course. You need someone who, has similar outlooks, on an outlook on, life and things that, like values, similar values to you. Obviously, there's so much more to a relationship. I'm not looking for just a board gamer.
yeah.
Of course not.
And what I
Otherwise, I
think is
probably could
interesting
have found
about
someone
that
by
is
now.
like if we go back to the whole like I'm going back to my education rant, so I apologize. But it's that whole thing of if we're both on the same page, that means a lot of other things that we're going to be on the same page about,
Right.
at
Yeah.
least morals and ways that we think about life and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because even if like two people play a game differently, but they still enjoy it, like you get to learn a lot about each other that way and how those interact. And I think that tells a lot about, that as well,
Yeah.
just by playing with them and understanding their different, ways that they play. Are they the person that likes to like throw the card down and do some like great chant or like mimic what the card's doing? Or do they just play it quietly and they're like, here you go. Here's my
Right.
2 cost item that I'm playing into my realm. There's just lots of things I think you can learn about someone's personality from
Oh,
that.
for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, but I do think, and people listen to the show, you gotta let me know. There's gotta be a way that on the internet we can get like a tabletop gaming dating circuit or something like, or a group or
Or
something
you know
like
what
that.
would be amazing if like cons when they start happening again have like an area sectioned off for like speed board gaming. Like you're playing two-player board games and just going around like cartographers, right? Like
Right.
small tables where you just sit opposite someone, play a game of cartographers, get up and move and speed board gaming. Like why don't they do that? They should do that.
I think that'd be great. I think I
Oh,
really do
yeah.
honestly think that'd be fantastic. Um,
Or like they should have pins like, for single board gamers. And then maybe it could have like, different icons that will indicate your orientation and things like that.
or maybe like your different games that you're into.
Or
So
you
like,
could wear like a meeple, like if you're homosexual, you could wear like a rainbow colored meeple. If you're not, you could wear a different colored meeple or something. I don't
pretty
know.
cool. I like that. I like that a
Like
lot.
a pin to indicate that you're open to meeting other people while at a con, like just so that way you're not just randomly asking people, are you single, just to
You give me app ideas. Don't make me write this stuff down.
write it down, please.
This no, it's just because I think because like obviously you and I have different stories about how we don't meet as many people that are into the hobby.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is exactly, and it might be because tabletop gaming has definitely grown in the past decade. Like
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
seeing where it's gone from like 2010 to now is stupid.
Hmm.
But kind of the thing I always tell people is like tabletop gaming has definitely grown. But like if you look at the video game industry, which is something I also follow very dearly, the amount of people who are playing, set and said game is still extramentally like so much bigger than even the best selling tabletop game of the year.
Yeah.
Because like I was just thinking about because I was listening to Team Covenant talk to Jamie Stagmeyer from Stonemeyer Games.
Hmm.
And he was talking about how many copies of Wingspan that they sold within like the first year that Wingspan came out. And I was thinking that because it was still under, I think it was still under like, I think maybe 100,000 copies. I could be
Hmm.
wrong. But
I'm one
I'm
of those
still
rare
relating
people
that
who
to like
hasn't.
a lot
Sorry.
of my big video games I love. And
Yeah.
like those games sell 3 million, 4 million units in their first month.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So like you have to think about the population difference. And granted, there is the difference thing of like, oh, someone's buying a board game for their family or their friend group or something like that. So it's kind of shared in a way,
Hmm.
but it's still like the amount of people that board games reach to be able to see that many people, to interact with that many people is still very
Right.
low in the grand scheme, which is, I think, I wish there was a way we can increase that number so we can share more wonderful experiences.
Yeah, so that's why I think cons would be a great place to meet people because you already know that the people at cons are interested in board games and your chances of meeting someone who also maybe shares similar life values and other important things that are necessary for a relationship might be easier to find at a con than in the city that you live in. And I am totally, open to a long distance relationship if I meet the right person. Because eventually one day I would like a permanent player number two. So
Don't we all? Don't we
yeah.
all? Um, yeah, I'm in the same boat. The long distance thing doesn't bug me at all, especially with like, I've talked about, if you're writing on my blog about how I basically found my best friend through the internet, which is
Mhm.
weird to think about. And if I can find my best friend that's states away,
Oh yeah.
you can easily find your player number two.
Oh, you can. Like, I would consider two of my closest friends now to be people I met in a Facebook board gaming group, and we have a group chat, and One of them lives in the UK, one of them lives in the Netherlands, and we talk about all kinds of things. We talk a lot about board games, yes, but all kinds of stuff. And I do consider them to be like two of my closest friends now, and I love them so much. Like, I just cannot imagine my life without them at this point. It's just, yeah.
I know. It's like interesting to me because like my buddy Brian, I'm shouting you out. Brian, you know who you are. We know Brian and I have actually talked about, eventually, getting together at some point. Brian's down in Texas and we're finding ways to get together, whether he comes and sees me or I come and see him. And
Yeah.
it's just like, obviously 2020 has definitely made me have a different outlook on that. I definitely would have told you if it was 2 years ago, hell no, Luke's ever going to do a long distance relationship. But honestly, with 2020, it's made me realize that, I could totally do that. It's like not a problem at all. It's just,
and you know what?
Yeah.
We were talking about playing games like over like Tabletopia or TTS, but there are so many board games you can play over Zoom, and it's a little bit better than playing on Tabletopia or TTS.
Yeah, you've definitely proven to me that even if we have to kind of finagle it, Zoom, you can play a lot of different games on Zoom.
Oh yeah.
Which is impressive. We played Moonrakers on Zoom a few weeks ago, and that game can be done. It's
it can
task,
be done,
but it can be done.
And when Sam gets his copy, we need to play a 3-player game of it over Zoom.
Hell yes.
Yeah.
That will be the real test. That'll be the real test. For sure. But yeah, I mean, obviously Zoom dates are a thing too. So like we've proven it. I've played games with Sam before over Zoom. I played other games with people over Zoom before. It's not hard to do. I think it's just finding the people that are willing to put in the work to get it to work, I think is a big thing. You don't necessarily need to have the big old fancy setup. I kind of do a little bit to get it to work. I think it's just two people that are willing to get the setup to work. And that'd be a great way to do it. And that way you can see each other's faces and you can play a game and actually still get that tactile feeling. Cause people know how much I've played on TTS, and there's still nothing better than moving those Disney villainous movers in the flesh on an actual board. It's great.
Yeah.
I miss it. I miss it so dearly. Actually, it was funny because I just got done before this podcast recording playing Netrunner with a buddy of mine. And also Netrunner, I've never played before. That game is fantastic. But like cardstock is something I realized I value very much so. Because like touching that is so important. And I think being able to share that tactile experience with somebody while you're playing with a game is super important. And something like, you're not like holding their hand or, giving them a hug, but it's like actually being able to like place this card in front of the other player and like touch it and show that you're playing or how you're interacting with that card or that piece, I think is something super important, especially where games where like you're actually moving the different pieces around together in some shape or form. I think is like something that is super underappreciated, honestly, through learning through this pandemic.
So Netrunner is a board game?
Netrunner is actually a living card game from Fantasy Flight Games.
Oh,
yes. Yes, it is. It's all about hacking into a corporation's servers. Pretty fun. It's like a game of bluffing and cat and mouse, and it takes place in a cyberpunk sort of utopia. And all of those things are things I like. All up my alley. But and my friend beat me all 3 times. So
nice.
He definitely enjoyed beating me 3 times in a row. So but yeah, Netrunner is definitely a game I would not bring on a date though. Definitely not a game I would bring on a date. That game's got a lot of moving around.
Right.
So that is a perfect example. But I would say games I would bring now in hindsight, I would totally bring Marvel United, because that game is incredibly simple to pick up and play. Marvel Legendary, a really fun cooperative deck building game that's pretty simple to get into as long as you're not doing any of the crazy expansion stuff. And Ticket to Ride. I would bring Ticket to Ride. I think that all 3 of those games I think are great. And Ticket to Ride's competitive, so if you want the competitive edge, I think that's what I would bring.
I've only played one of the European versions of Ticket to Ride, and then the London version, the small little one. But I recently Yeah, I recently added the Nordic one to my wish list because I joined a board game Secret Santa. So I was like, what
Ooh.
games can I add? And the Nordic one just looks so pretty. So I was like, I'll add that to my wish list. I don't have it, so.
Yeah, I told you I really like train games. So
Oh
my
yeah,
secret, it's my secret thing.
Brass Birmingham, though not entirely a train game. So yeah, I don't know.
Anything that has to do with that trains that ride on rails and they move from point A to point B.
Well,
Um,
Brass is more about building up your network so you can sell goods, like so you're building up your industries, but you do need to connect them by rails in the rail era. So I don't know if that would, qualify as a train game, does it?
it qualifies the needs that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Delivering goods and placing down railroad is all I need.
Mhm.
You got me covered there. Um,
Cool.
although I will say, so the one thing a Ticket to Ride I wish would be like do more like is actually being able to customize your routes a little bit more because that's like one of the things I really like about Railways of the World is because it's actually like you can build the route to the different cities and I
Mhm.
really like that whole mechanic. It's got that whole railroad tycoon feel to it. With Ticket to Ride, you honestly feel like you're just traveling from place to place and city to city and it's more of just like you're traveling there rather than actually like building up the railroad to get there. But it's different strokes for different folks.
There was a
Um,
really cool looking train game on Kickstarter months and months ago that I really wanted to back. I don't remember the name of it, but I had, spent all of my money on other Kickstarters, so I didn't
yes.
get it.
Yeah, trust me.
But
My
it
Marvel
was
United Kickstarter. It's very expensive.
yeah, it was
Um,
such a cool looking train game. I just cannot remember the name of it now. Pacific Railway. I think that's what it
is that
was.
what it was?
Yeah,
All
Pacific
right, I'll
Railway.
look this up. I
I'm
need
just
more
gonna
train games. Um, I still have yet to play Ride the Rails, and it makes me very upset.
mm.
No, that's on my list to do. I own it, and I want to play it very badly.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, another sidetrack. Training games,
Oh
Netrunner,
gosh, yeah.
fantastic.
Fun
Tangents is what we
games.
do on the show. Um, well, it's I think it's just with talking about this, is just made me kind of realize more like some different aspects that like you have to think about when trying to introduce this to someone that you care about. You know, even beyond like even the relationship factor, just like friends and stuff like that. Because I obviously you want friends that kind of like share the same interests as you. They don't have to get in the same weeds. But
Right. Yeah.
I've definitely realized, over the past few years of just kind of learning a little bit more about myself and like the people I want to surround myself with. I
Mm.
mean, my weekly people I play games with, both of them are moderate to heavy board gamers, and one of them is actually very recent, as of August, into the hobby. And it was my
Mhm.
buddy I just played Netrunner with tonight, and he was jamming on it, and it's great. And I just realized that those are the types of people I want to like surround myself with as friends,
Yeah.
but also like as a significant other at some point. I would I would want to share that same experience as well, especially if it was like we're playing a game for that first time. Being
Yeah.
able to open the box together and smell the components and all that stuff,
Oh, smelling the components in the board. Yes.
and punching the stuff out. I
And
like punching
punching this
tokens
stuff
out.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Um, but I definitely that's definitely a lot of stuff I've learned. Is there anything you've kind of learned, and we'll kind of wrap up the show here?
Oh gosh, what have I learned?
Yeah, well, yeah. What have you learned? This is the pop quiz.
Oh god,
We're
that's
getting
such a
graded.
broad question. Oh my gosh.
Well, that's what we do. We ask broad questions on the show.
I don't know. I was not prepared for this.
Oh,
So what
no one's
is
ever
this something
prepared for
I've
the chance
learned
of a
from life
lifetime.
or from this just talking to you? What could you narrow it down a bit?
Um, let's do about talking to me. What have you learned? What have you learned through this podcast?
What have I
Narrow it down.
learned through this podcast? Oh god. I'm really put on the spot here.
I apologize.
Uh, hmm. Oh my god, I can't think of anything. I'm sure I've learned lots of things, and I'm
No,
trying
it's
so
okay.
hard to think of them.
No, it's okay. If you can't answer, I'm not going to force you to answer. Don't worry. Um,
Gosh.
well, what's funny? What will probably happen is that I'll post this on Twitter, and then you'll probably have something to comment on it, and then we'll
Oh,
get a
I know I
discussion
will.
going.
You know I will. I'll
Yeah,
probably
I
have
know.
so
I
much
know.
to
I know
say.
how you are. You have
Yeah.
great things to talk about on Twitter whenever I see you post something. So
Oh, thank you. No, I usually have a lot to say, like, I mean, so I just don't know why I'm drawing a blank right now.
no, it's okay. I put you on the spot, so don't feel bad. But But before we go, obviously, Sarah, you have a Twitter.
I
Would you
do.
like to plug your Twitter on the show, along with other things?
Sure. I am Puffindor on Twitter, so that's Puffindor. I post a lot of board game stuff there, including my 1-minute videos, but I also post like other stuff like cat pictures, a lot of cat pictures.
Lots of
And
cat
just
pictures.
stuff about life, my life. And then my board games in a minute. That's my channel, so you can find that on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So that's board games in a minute.
And if you are not already watching Sarah's stuff, it is an absolute joy to watch you cover a game in a minute.
Oh,
I'm
thank
not gonna
you.
lie. I always love I primarily watch your stuff on Twitter and
Oh yeah.
occasionally Instagram when I'm scrolling through Instagram looking at all my artwork stuff that I like to look at. And it's super fun to watch you cover the games like literally in a minute because I think one of the things we take for granted is how long it takes to like understand the concepts and like core mechanics of a game, and you just
Oh
do
yeah.
such a good job at it. You seriously do. Especially, I know you worked hard on this one, Dune. If you haven't already, check out Sarah's video on Dune. It's great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I actually am interested in playing Dune now, like just from a mechanical standpoint. So it's on my list. But also thank you for joining and also actually offering this idea of discussion to the table. This was very interesting to discuss. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed this, and I got
Well,
to use my
I'm glad.
mic.
And
I'm
as
so
I always
excited.
tell any of my guests, we'll more than likely have you back on at some point to talk about something to
Yeah,
bring
and I
your.
apologize for my really loud furnace, my air that you might have heard during the
We
podcast.
can't hear it.
No, you didn't
Can't.
hear it?
No. No. Through the
Are you
power.
sure?
No. This is the beauty part of Discord a little bit, as well as what is it? Are you just running your Mac audio? Is that what you're doing?
Um,
Or is it your new mic?
it's my new mic. It's plugged
Yeah,
into
no,
my
you're not
computer.
gonna hear any of that stuff.
What? Really?
No. I'll tell you one thing. My heater's going off right now. Can you hear it?
'Cause no, but my heater is so loud because it's forced air, and I'm sitting here, like, nervous, like, "Oh, crap, it's, needs to."
No, all of a sudden Sarah's gonna listen to the podcast and she's gonna be like, what's that noise in the background of the show? And I'll be like, don't
Aw.
worry, that's not anything. I probably just freaked you out by doing that noise on the mic.
No, no, no.
But no, you sound great. No, I always tell people, you don't underestimate the power of microphones because they do a lot of work.
Wow.
They're great.
Awesome. I'm wondering if I can use this for my videos, but I'll probably end up knocking it over if I try to do that, so.
We'll talk after the podcast.
Okay.
I'll give you a thing or two to help you out with that.
Okay.
But until then, everybody, thank you again for Sarah for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. And until next time, until we bring some more unique ideas to your table, we'll see you on the next show.